The flight from New York to Washington, D.C. glided through the deep blue sky, so quiet that one could clearly hear the whisper of the wind through the airplane window. In the first-class section, a luxurious and elegant space unfolds, where soft golden light reflects off premium leather seats and champagne glasses are neatly placed on the table. In that luxurious space, passengers are immersed in privacy, their eyes glued to their phones or high-end political newspapers. Amidst the solemn atmosphere, Barron Trump sat quietly, his expression calm, but his eyes constantly observing everything around him. At the age of 18, he not only impresses with his towering height and elegant appearance, but also with the rare composure of a young person from a famous family. Always keeping himself within the safe zone of discretion, Barron rarely attracts attention, but those who have interacted with him know that behind that cold exterior lies a warm heart and a strong will to do what is right. On the same flight, near the entrance to the first-class area, a veteran named Sam sat quietly. He was an old soldier who had fought bravely in the Middle East, returning with a severely injured leg after being hit by shrapnel in a fierce battle. The prosthetic leg makes each of his steps heavy, as if he is carrying the sorrowful memories of the battlefield. His face is weathered, and his eyes, which have witnessed moments of life and death, now reflect a quiet endurance. Sam's presence in the first-class cabin seemed out of place. The ticket was arranged by the flight attendant because he needed more space to stretch his legs, but the contrast between his simplicity and the surrounding opulence made him shrink even more. The worn-out coat and faded backpack placed under the seat created a stark contrast to the polished suits and high-end leather luggage of the other passengers, but the sad thing is that no one pays attention to him. The other passengers seemed not to notice the presence of a veteran sitting there. They walked past him without a glance, leaving only small, dismissive murmurs. No one asked, no one cared. Sam, familiar with the feeling of being forgotten by the world, simply bowed his head quietly, as if wanting to vanish into that space. Barron's gaze stopped at him. The silence of the first-class section now seemed heavier as he saw Sam's solitary figure. The heavy footsteps, the weariness etched on his face, and the undeniable sense of alienation in his hunched posture made Barron feel something special. He couldn't take his eyes off him, and a deep sense of compassion suddenly welled up in his heart. No one else noticed, but Barron couldn't look away. He leaned back in the chair, contemplating the approach, knowing that a small action could carry great significance. When Barron glanced over and recognized Sam, he immediately noticed the heavy look in his eyes. A young person and an old man, two individuals from completely different worlds, but it seemed there was something that connected them. Barron looked at him with concern, a feeling rising within him that he was unsure how to act upon. That was the beginning of a story that no one on the flight could have predicted. Barron Trump sat in the spacious seat of the first-class cabin, his gaze casually drifting over each passenger around him. When his gaze stopped at the veteran near the entrance, he couldn't take his eyes off him. That man, with his old military uniform and prosthetic leg, was trying to move to his seat. His steps were limping, and each movement made the quiet scene tense. A flight attendant tried to help, but Sam still had to use his hands to hold onto the seat to support his body weight. Barron slightly frowned. It was not a look of curiosity or pity, but of deep empathy. As the son of a former president of the United States, he grew up amid stories of sacrifice and bravery of soldiers, but he had never witnessed a soldier struggling with the aftermath of war right in front of him. He stood up and walked towards the veteran. Sam was now sitting in his chair, his hands resting on his knees, his face briefly showing signs of fatigue. Barron walked over, wearing a friendly smile. "Hello, sir. I am Barron," he said, his tone calm yet warm. Sam looked up, his eyes shining with surprise. "Hello, young man. I am Sam. Are you okay?" "I see you're having some difficulty moving," Barron continued, his eyes reflecting sincerity. Sam nodded, smiled lightly, but couldn't hide the awkwardness. "I'm fine. It's just that, this leg sometimes doesn't listen to me much. But it's okay, I'm used to it." Barron was silent for a few seconds, his gaze fixed on his prosthetic leg. He couldn't imagine what this man had been through, but he knew one thing: Sam deserved to be treated with the highest respect. "You are a soldier, right?" Barron asked. Sam nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes, but quickly turned contemplative. "That's right. I served over 20 years in the military, fighting in the Middle East, and bringing back a few not-so-pleasant memories." Barron sat down next to Sam, his eyes attentively listening as if each of his words were a precious story. Sam recounted the days of fierce battles, the comrades who did not return, and the day he was injured. A sudden explosion that cost him a part of his body but did not take away his spirit. When the story ended, Barron let out a soft sigh. "Thank you for your sacrifice. I think there are no words sufficient to express our gratitude for people like you." Sam smiled, a modest smile. "I just do what I need to do, kid. But thank you for those words." Barron paused, as if pondering something. He looked around the first-class cabin, where people were comfortably enjoying the spacious seats and attentive service. Then his gaze returned to Sam, who was trying to sit comfortably on a chair that was not wide enough to stretch his legs. He made a decision, and even he didn't expect that this decision would surprise the entire flight and change the life of this veteran forever. "Sam, I have a suggestion. I want to give up my seat for you. It's more spacious, and you can stretch your legs comfortably." Sam looked at Barron in surprise, his eyebrows furrowing. "Give up your seat? But you don't need to do that. You're also a passenger, you know." Barron smiled. The sincerity in his eyes made it impossible for Sam to refuse. "You have sacrificed so much for this country. Giving up my seat for him is just a small thing I can do to show my gratitude. Please, let me do this." Sam looked at Barron, his eyes momentarily reddening. It had been a long time since he had seen such a kind act, especially from a young man like that. After a few seconds of thought, he nodded. "If you say so, then I will accept this kindness. Thank you, Barron." Barron stood up, called the flight attendant to assist Sam in moving. The other passengers in first class began to notice the incident, whispering about Barron's actions. Some people couldn't help but be surprised to see the son of a former US president give up his first-class seat for a veteran. When Sam sat down in the new seat, he relaxed and let out a soft sigh. The spacious, comfortable chair seemed to soothe his physical pain. He turned to Barron, who was now sitting in an empty seat in the economy class, and said loudly, "You're a wonderful young man. Thank you for everything." Barron just smiled and nodded. He knew that he had just done a simple thing, but it carried great significance. What he didn't know was that this small action would lead to unexpected events in the journey ahead. Barron Trump's actions did not go unnoticed by the surrounding passengers, even though he tried to carry them out as naturally as possible. In the first-class cabin, where silence usually reigns, a wave of whispers began to spread. Curious eyes turned towards him, mixed with surprise and admiration. A man sitting nearby leaned over and whispered to his wife, "Is that young man Barron Trump?" The woman nodded, her eyes never leaving Barron. "That's right, it's him. But I didn't expect him to give up his seat for a veteran. Truly admirable." In another corner, A young woman quickly took out her phone and started recording a video. She tried to capture the whole scene of Barron standing next to Sam, his gentle smile, and how he helped the veteran move. "This will definitely spread," she murmured, her eyes lighting up. The passengers around also had similar reactions. A few people whispered in admiration, "What a nice young man. Who would have thought Donald Trump's son could be so humble?" On the economy class side, Barron found an empty seat near the back of the plane. He sat down without any sign that he had done something significant. An elderly woman sitting in the next seat turned to him, her eyes curious. "Are you giving up your first-class seat? I heard the flight attendant say that." Barron nodded slightly, smiling modestly. "That's right, ma'am. I think that veteran needs comfort more than I do." The old lady looked at him for a moment, then broke into a kind smile. "It's truly good to see a young person with such a warm heart. Your actions will inspire many people, believe me." Just a few minutes later, social media started buzzing. Photos and videos of Barron's actions were quickly uploaded to platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. A user commented, "Former President Trump's son just did something that moved me. He gave up his first-class seat for a veteran on the flight. He truly is a respectable person." Comments below keep pouring in. This is something we need to see more of in today's society. "I never thought Barron Trump would have such a kind heart. Truly admirable. A small action, but it carries great significance." Meanwhile, Barron was unaware of the attention he was receiving. He simply leaned his head back against the chair, his eyes looking out the window, feeling satisfied that Sam was now more comfortable. In the first-class cabin, Sam also sensed the changes around him. Some passengers passing by didn't forget to stop and wish him a good flight. A middle-aged man lightly touched Sam's shoulder and said, "You are very lucky. But you deserve this." Sam could only smile, his heart filled with warmth. He didn't expect that just a normal flight would make him feel the respect and kindness from a stranger, especially from a young man like Barron. When the flight attendant walked by, she leaned down and whispered to him, "That boy is truly special. We are also very moved." Sam nodded slightly, his gaze directed towards the back of the plane where Barron was sitting. A thought crossed his mind. This boy, with his kindness and humility, will surely accomplish even greater things. Sam sat comfortably in the first-class seat that Barron Trump had vacated. Gratitude shone in his eyes as he watched Barron walk toward the back of the plane. A moment of silence passed, and then Sam gently waved to the flight attendant. "Could you help me call that young man back?" "I want to say a few words," he said in a warm, slightly emotional voice. When Barron returned, Sam smiled and extended his hand. "Thank you, Barron. This is an act that I will never forget." "You don't need to thank me, sir," Barron replied, a hint of embarrassment flashing across his face. "I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable." Sam nodded. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping as if he wanted to share a secret. "Perhaps you don't recognize me, but I once had a special connection with your family." Barron frowned. "Really?" "I'm very sorry, but I don't remember." Sam chuckled softly. "It's okay. You were too young at that time. I am Sam Walker, a former member of the United States military. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to assist your father, Mr. Donald Trump, at an important event. Perhaps he has told you about it, but I guess you haven't heard of it." Hearing that, Barron appeared curious. "Could you tell me more? I really don't know this story." Sam began to recount. "It was in the early 2000s. At that time, I had just returned from a special mission in the Middle East carrying a pair of injured legs and a heart full of confusion about the future. I didn't know how to start my life over. But fortunately, a charity for veterans reached out to me. And who is behind funding that organization? It was your father. Barron opened his eyes wide, surprised by the story. Your father is not only the biggest sponsor, but also frequently attends the events. One time, he saw me standing quietly in the corner of the room, not knowing how to fit in with the people around. He approached, shook my hand, and asked about my story. That was the first time I felt that someone truly listened to me, not as an injured soldier, but as a human being. Barron was silent, listening intently, his eyes shining with admiration. But it didn't stop there, Sam continued. A year later, when your father organized a major fundraising event in New York to help veterans and struggling soldiers, he invited me to be the keynote speaker. I never thought I would stand on stage and speak in front of hundreds of people, but your father believed in me. He said that my story could inspire many others. Sam paused for a moment, his eyes seemingly lost in memories. Thanks to your father, I have found a new purpose in life. After that event, I started participating in charitable activities, helping other soldiers like me reintegrate into life. And your family, especially your father, have always been the ones standing behind us, supporting us both financially and morally. Barron couldn't hide his astonishment. I had no idea about this. My father rarely tells stories about what he has done, but I know he always cares about the veterans. Hearing his story, I felt very proud. Sam smiled. And today, you made me remember all the good things your family's done. Do you know, Barron, you are like your father in one way. You also have a heart that cares for and helps others. Barron smiled shyly. I only do what I think is right. Sam gently patted him on the shoulder. Sometimes the smallest actions can create the biggest changes. You did more than just give up your seat. You made me feel appreciated again, just like your father did many years ago. The conversation between the two lasted a few more minutes, filled with memories and sincere words of gratitude. Barron felt a special connection with Sam, not only because he was a veteran, but also due to the deep relationship between him and the Trump family. When Barron returned to his seat in the economy class, he couldn't stop thinking about Sam's story. A warm and proud feeling welled up inside him. Perhaps the values that your father once sowed are now blossoming within you. In the first-class cabin, Sam sat quietly, his gaze distant. He thought about what had happened today, about how a simple act of kindness had led him to this unexpected reunion. In his heart, a sense of gratitude overwhelmed him, not only towards Barron, but also towards the entire Trump family. And as if fate had arranged it, that flight was not just a journey from New York to Washington, D.C., but also a bridge for an inspiring story, connecting the past, present, and future. The flight was gradually entering the landing phase, and the atmosphere in the cabin became more lively than ever. The people around them kept glancing over at Barron and Sam. A few passengers couldn't help but share the story they had just witnessed on social media. You know, a nearby passenger said to Barron as he returned to his seat, what you did today is commendable. Not everyone is willing to do that, especially at your age. Barron just smiled gently. I simply thought that he needed that chair more than I did. When the plane stopped at the gate, passengers gradually stood up to retrieve their luggage. Sam carefully stood up from his first-class seat, thanking each flight attendant who had assisted him throughout the journey. Barron stepped closer to Sam once again. Do you need me to help carry your luggage, sir? Sam burst out laughing. No need, Barron, but I want to thank you again. You did more than you think. Not just giving up your seat, but also giving me the belief that kindness still exists." Sam paused for a moment, then pulled out a small object, carefully wrapped in a handkerchief from his jacket pocket. "But before we leave here, I have something I want to give you." Barron looked at the object in Sam's hand with a curious gaze. "You don't need to do that." Sam shook his head. "This is not an ordinary gift. It contains a lot of memories and significance, not just for me, but also for your entire family." When Barron unfolded the handkerchief, he saw an old, time-worn photograph. In the photo, your father, Donald Trump, is standing among a group of veterans, all smiling. On the right side of the photo, a young Sam, dressed in military uniform, wears a proud smile. This is from the event your father organized many years ago. For me, that day changed my life. I think this photo will remind you that your father is not only a leader, but also a caring person, just like you. Barron held the photo in his hand, feeling its profound significance. "Thank you, Sam. I will keep this photo carefully. It is not just a gift, but also a part of my family's memory." Sam placed his hand on Barron's shoulder. "And you, Barron, always remember that your kindness today has left a mark on me and many others." When Barron stepped out of the airport, the photo was still tightly held in his hand. He thought about Sam's words and realized how a small action could have a big impact. On social media, Barron's story continues to spread. Many people began to see him with admiration and respect. For Barron, that flight was not just a journey from New York to Washington, D.C. It was also a profound lesson about the value of care and kindness, values that he was determined to carry with him on his journey. And for Sam, he left the flight with a warm heart, believing that kindness always exists, even in the simplest moments. The story of Barron Trump giving up his seat for veteran Sam is not only impressive for its kindness, but also a clear testament to the continuation of the humanitarian values that the Trump family has upheld over the years. Although famous for their successes in business and politics, the Trump family is also known for their significant contributions to charitable activities and community support. Veteran Sam, in a post-flight interview, shared his feelings about Barron's actions. "Barron gave up his seat for me not only out of kindness, but also because of the values he was taught by his family. I have seen those values in your parents, in the way they help others, and today I see them more alive than ever." Sam recalled the times the Trump family organized charity events, supported veterans, and provided scholarships for their children. Those efforts were not merely social obligations, but also reflected the Trump family's commitment to those who have served the country. Barron's actions on that flight seemed to be a natural continuation of this tradition of philanthropy. Barron's actions did not stop at the moment on the flight. When the story spread, he quickly received invitations to participate in events honoring veterans. From attending memorial ceremonies to supporting educational programs, Barron is increasingly active in meaningful community activities. One of the first projects Barron participated in was a scholarship program for the children of struggling veterans. He not only contributed financially, but also directly participated in selecting the candidates, meeting their families, and listening to the stories of those who have experienced loss and sacrifice. The relationship between Barron and Sam did not end after the flight. The two maintained contact and developed a close relationship. Sam, with his experience and wisdom, became an advisor and friend to Barron. He shared with Barron the difficulties that veterans face, from psychological trauma to reintegrating into civilian life. Those stories helped Barron gain a deeper understanding of the sacrifices that veterans made to protect the country. The story of Barron Trump is a powerful reminder that kindness does not depend on fame, status, or wealth. It is how each person chooses to treat those around them, especially those in need of help. Barron's actions created a ripple effect, spreading inspiration and rekindling faith in the good values of humanity. It reminds us that even a small, simple action can change someone else's life. Compassion does not lie in the scale of actions, but in the sincerity and heart dedicated to the community. For Barron, this action is not just a standout moment in his life, but also marks the beginning of a new journey. It is the journey of a young person, bearing the responsibility of continuing the humanitarian values that his family has built and spread. And for all of us, this story is a reminder. Each person can do something good, no matter how small, to help make this world a better place. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can become a warm flame, illuminating those around us.